The strait never stood still. Even on calm days when the surface appeared smooth and reflective, water moved beneath in layered directions: cold against warm, salt against fresh, tide against wind. The crossing currents were invisible from above, but everything that lived here felt them constantly. The Orca entered the strait alone. She surfaced once near the outer channel, exhaling a short, controlled breath that lifted briefly into the cool air before dissolving. Her dorsal fin cut cleanly through the surface, tall and steady, then disappeared again as she slipped beneath the water. This route was familiar. She had travelled it many times over the years, sometimes with others, sometimes alone. The strait connected feeding grounds to open water, a narrow passage shaped by coastline and depth, where sound carried far and movement required attention. Below the surface, the water darkened quickly. Light filtered down in broken shafts, distorted by surface motion. Kelp forests rose from the seabed in uneven clusters, their long fronds bending with the current. Small fish moved in loose formations, adjusting constantly, never holding one direction for long. The Orca moved with slow, powerful strokes of her tail. Each movement was deliberate, energy measured and conserved. She did not rush. There was no reason to. The strait demanded patience more than speed. As she passed deeper into the channel, the first current met her. It came from the north, colder and heavier, sliding beneath a warmer surface layer flowing the opposite way. The Orca felt the shift immediately, pressure changing along her flank, water pulling subtly at different angles across her body. She adjusted without breaking rhythm. Her body angled slightly, aligning with the stronger flow beneath while allowing the surface current to pass over her back. Years of movement through complex water had taught her how to let currents work rather than resist them. Sound travelled farther here. She released a series of low clicks, not loud, not urgent. The echoes returned slowly, stretched by distance and depth. The strait answered with information, rock walls narrowing, open water ahead, scattered schools of fish hugging the edges of the current. Far above, a ferry moved steadily across the channel. Its engines produced a constant vibration that carried deep into the water, a low-frequency presence the Orca recognized but did not fear. She altered her depth slightly, moving beneath the noisiest layer, where sound softened and water felt more stable. The second current crossed the first. This one flowed inward, drawn by tide and shape of the land. It pressed against the colder layer at an angle, creating turbulence where the two met. The Orca entered the intersection carefully. Here, water did not simply push, it twisted. Her body rolled subtly as pressure shifted along her sides, forcing constant micro-adjustments. She slowed her tail strokes, allowing momentum to carry her forward while she assessed the flow. This place required attention. Mistakes here cost energy. Energy mattered. A harbour seal surfaced briefly near the edge of the strait, then disappeared again, aware without fully understanding. The Orca registered it and let it go. This was not a hunting pass. This was transit. Above, the light shifted as clouds moved across the sky, dimming the water below. The Orca rose slightly, then levelled out, maintaining a depth where visibility and sound remained balanced. The currents crossed again. For a moment, the water offered resistance from three directions at once. The Orca responded by turning her head slightly and rolling her body, presenting less surface to the strongest pull. The movement was subtle, almost imperceptible, but effective. She passed through. Behind her, the water closed without trace. Ahead, the strait widened. The Orca continued on, not fighting the currents, not yielding to them, but moving between, guided by experience, shaped by water that never stopped changing. And the crossing was only beginning. The first sign of others came through sound, not voices, not calls, just a change in the way the water returned her signals. The echoes arrived unevenly now, layered and complex, overlapping in ways that suggested movement ahead rather than fixed structure. Other bodies. The Orca slowed. Her tail strokes became shallower, spacing out, allowing her to drift briefly while she listened. In a strait like this, sound mattered more than sight. Water bent light quickly, but sound travelled around corners, through depth, past obstacles. She released another series of clicks. This time, the echoes came back faster, sharper, carrying information about size, spacing, direction. Not a pod, not close kin. Individuals moving independently, but aware of one another. Transient orcas. They were farther south, closer to the narrowing where current speed increased. Their movement intersected the same crossing she was approaching, but at a different depth. The orca adjusted course slightly, angling lower. Avoidance did not mean fear, it meant efficiency. Crossing paths with others in tight water required negotiation, subtle changes in depth, speed, and sound. Conflict wasted energy, confusion wasted more. Above, the ferry had changed direction. Its low-frequency noise shifted, sliding across the water column like a slow shadow. The sound pressed downward, compressing the acoustic space the orca relied on. She felt it immediately, the way the strait seemed to grow louder without becoming clearer. She dove deeper. Below the strongest noise layer, the water felt heavier but quieter. Pressure increased, steady and predictable. Here, the currents were slower but less forgiving. She moved forward with deliberate control, her body slicing through layers that pulled in different directions. The crossing point approached. Here, the seabed rose unevenly, forcing deep water upward and surface water downward. The result was a complex weave of flow, constantly rearranging itself. Small fish avoided the center, clustering instead along the edges where turbulence created brief shelter. The orca passed through the edge zone. She did not chase. Fish scattered anyway, silver flashes dissolving into the dark. The energy cost of hunting here would have been too high. She was moving through, not stopping. A harbour porpoise surfaced nearby, startled by her presence, then vanished again with quick, shallow movements. The orca noted it and continued on, uninterested. Her attention shifted briefly upward. Two human vessels now crossed the strait at different angles, one large and slow, the other small and fast. Their wakes intersected, adding surface chaos that rippled downward. The water above churned, but below, the effect translated into shifting pressure rather than motion. She compensated instinctively. A slight roll, a minor depth correction. Tail strokes adjusted to counter-drag. None of it dramatic, just constant response. The transient orcas passed somewhere to her left, out of sight but no longer overlapping in trajectory. Their sound signatures faded, stretched thin by distance and current. The strait widened again. Here, the crossing currents began to lose definition, blending into a more stable flow. The water felt smoother against her skin, less argumentative. She rose gradually, testing the layers above for noise and light. The ferry's sound diminished. The water grew clearer. She surfaced once, briefly, exhaling with the same controlled force as before. The breath was efficient, unhurried. Then she slipped back beneath the surface, continuing on her line. Behind her, currents continued to cross. Ahead, the water opened, and the strait, having resisted her passage in subtle ways, allowed her through without ceremony. The water changed gradually. There was no clear line where the strait ended and open passage began. Instead, resistance eased in small increments, fewer conflicting pulls, longer stretches of consistent flow. The pressure along the orca's body evened out, becoming predictable again. She felt it before she saw it. Her tail strokes lengthened, settling into a slower, more economical rhythm. The need for constant adjustment faded. Here, momentum carried her forward without negotiation. The seabed dropped away. Kelp thinned, then disappeared entirely, replaced by darker water and wider acoustic space. When she clicked now, the echoes returned broader and less defined, signaling distance rather than obstruction. Open water. The orca rose slightly, not to the surface, but into a layer where light spread more evenly. The surface above shimmered, broken by wind rather than wake. The low-frequency noise of vessels softened further, stretched thin by distance and depth until it became part of the background rather than an intrusion. She travelled here before. Memory for an orca was not visual in the way humans understood it. It was spatial, acoustic, physical, a remembered combination of pressure, sound, and effort. This stretch of water felt familiar, not because it looked the same, but because it behaved the same. She passed through a band of colder water. It wrapped around her like a separate skin, sliding along her flank before giving way again to warmer flow. The transition carried information: offshore currents, seasonal change, time passing whether she acknowledged it or not. Behind her, the Strait continued its work. Currents still crossed, noise still layered itself through water. Other animals still adjusted, compensated, avoided, but none of that required her attention now. The narrowness had released her. She slowed briefly and listened. No immediate echoes of large bodies, no overlapping signatures, only distant sound, far-off vessels, the faint movement of fish schools too small to matter, the steady ambient noise of water in motion. The orca surfaced. This time she remained longer. Her blow rose clean and white against the darker air, then dissolved. She inhaled deeply, refilling lungs that had managed pressure and depth without strain. The surface carried wind and smell, information less precise than sound but still useful. She rolled slightly and descended again. Below, the water accepted her without turbulence. The crossing had cost energy, but not more than expected. The calculations had been correct, the adjustments sufficient. Nothing had gone wrong, and in environments like this, that was its own kind of success. The orca turned subtly toward her next destination. Feeding grounds lay ahead, shaped by different forces, governed by different rules. There would be other crossings, other negotiations with water that refused to move in only one direction, but this one was finished. The Strait did not remember her passage. Water closed, currents realigned, sound filled the space she left behind, and the orca moved on, carrying only what mattered: experience, alignment, and the quiet knowledge of how to pass through places where everything moved at once. By late afternoon, the Strait had erased all trace of passage. Currents continued to cross where they always had, folding over one another in slow, persistent patterns shaped by coastline and depth. The surface showed only wind and tide, nothing that suggested what had moved beneath hours earlier. The orca was already far beyond it. She travelled now along a broader corridor of water, where flow aligned more consistently and navigation required less constant correction. Her pace was steady, unhurried. This was not transit under pressure. This was continuation. Below her, layers of water shifted gently rather than collided. The effort required to move forward dropped noticeably. Her tail strokes shortened, then spaced farther apart, conserving energy she would need later. She listened as she moved. Sound returned differently here, less cluttered, more spacious. Distant echoes suggested depth and open distance rather than constraint. The absence of interference carried its own information: fewer vessels, fewer abrupt boundaries, fewer reasons to adjust. She passed through another temperature gradient. This one was softer, less abrupt than those in the Strait. It told her of offshore mixing, of seasonal drift. These signals did not demand response. They were simply noted, stored without urgency. Far behind her, the ferry docked. Engines slowed. Noise diminished. Human schedules resumed their own rhythms, unaware of how deeply sound had travelled earlier in the day. The Strait returned to its layered movement, indifferent to whether it was crossed or not. The orca surfaced once more as the light began to lower. The sun sat at a shallow angle now, its reflection stretched and broken by surface texture. Her breath rose and fell, controlled and efficient. She did not linger. The surface was not where she belonged for long. She descended again, angling slightly toward deeper water where pressure increased and light softened. Here, the environment asked less of her. The water held her evenly. This stretch of travel would continue through the evening. She would meet others later, perhaps not today, perhaps not tomorrow. Routes overlapped when they did. They separated again without ceremony. The ocean did not require constant company. What mattered was movement that made sense. The Strait had been one such place, narrow, demanding, layered with forces that pulled in different directions. She had crossed it not by resisting, not by surrendering, but by aligning where alignment was possible and adjusting where it was not. Now that work was finished. The water closed behind her, keeping no memory, only motion. And the Orca continued on, part of a system that never stopped moving, whether anyone noticed or not.